So I'm trying my hand at a sword and board tank build, and what I've come up with is incredibly versatile. We're also changing up the formula this week, and I want to go a little bit lighter on the narrative and basically just give you a place to get started for your character, then leave the story progression up to you. This gives me more of an opportunity to break down the build for you guys and show some gameplay and highlight certain points. We'll also be doing 3 breakdowns during the leveling process so we can chat about how to play the build at certain points throughout a playthrough. So buckle in and let's tackle the backstory. You were born into a modest, unassuming halfling family. You grew up with the weight of ordinary expectations. Your parents loved you and they instilled in you a strong sense of goodness, the right way of doing things from a young age. Your father and brothers died suddenly when you were still young in a freak fishing accident, and even a shallow river can mean death for a halfling. This left you and your grieving mother adrift, and she clung to you, and all you remember is her whispering in your ear, "My last ray of sunshine." Driven by an unshakable desire to be brave and courageous, to become the embodiment of pride for her sake, you sought out the teachings of Lathander, the Morning Lord and the God of the Dawn. You worked hard to pursue the path of Lathander's clerics, but your heart yearned for a more direct means of protecting people in need. To fulfill your mother's dreams, to become the last ray of sunshine in the dark places of the world, to become a valiant guardian of the light. Okay, so character creation, and for our build this week, I wanted to make a halfling since we haven't made one yet. And I love the idea of a halfling being the most sturdy character in the party, and it just works so perfectly. For our subrace, it doesn't matter too much. The great things about playing a halfling you get regardless of your subrace choice, but I would recommend that you play Strongheart. So just for being a halfling, we get the lucky feature, letting us re-roll any ones we get on our attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws, which is a pretty incredible feature, making it so that we have to roll 2 ones in a row for us to critically fail on most checks, and letting us re-roll our attacks is great since our strength will be quite low for most of our playthrough, and we won't be maxed until very late in the game. Next, we get Brave, which gives us advantage on saving throws against being frightened, practically negating that crowd control effect on us. And finally, we get Strongheart Resilience for being a Strongheart halfling, giving us advantage on saving throws against poison and resistance to poison damage, mostly negating poison damage for this character also. Yes, now we know never to overlook the halflings. Next for our class, we are starting as a Cleric for this build, picking up Guidance as your first cantrip, and then the other 2 are more or less up to you. For our domain, we are going with the Life domain, and this is our first step into supporting our allies and tanking the damage for them, giving us the Bless spell, Always Prepared, and giving us Cure Wounds, which we will probably never use, but it is still nice to have because it is affected by your subclass feature, Disciple of Life. This empowers your healing spells, increasing their healing based on the level of the spell cast, +2. This is really potent in the early game and it does fall off a little bit later, but we do get skills to make up for that. Onto our deity, and we are taking Lathander of course, and I love how this deity plays into the Act 1 section of the game, adding some unique roleplay options and works really well for a healer and protector type character. Acolyte for the background, which is no surprise, and for our abilities we are doing something a bit weird here, but stick with me on this one. So since we went Cleric, this gives our character proficiency in Wisdom and Charisma, which means we add our proficiency bonus to our saving throws, but also to our spell DC, which is great since we are so mad or multiple ability score dependent, which means we can focus our ability scores into either Wisdom for Cleric spells or Charisma for Paladin spells, since we will be taking Paladin levels with this build. For us, we will mainly be using Cleric for support skills, and so we will be minimizing our offensive spells in this area. But I mentioned the proficiency bonus so you don't ignore them entirely, since you may still have a high enough DC to get off the occasional Guiding Bolt, Command, or Hold person. Okay, rambling over, and let's take 14 in Strength, +1 here, 10 in Dexterity since we'll be in heavy armor, 15 Constitution, 8 in Intelligence, 10 in Wisdom, and 14 Charisma +2 here. Pretty weird spread, but the odd scores will be sorted out eventually. Just bear with it for a few levels, and remember you are a support and a tank. You're not really aiming for damage yet. For skills, I would grab History and Persuasion here, and for our prepared spell, definitely Healing Word. Okay, smack your way off the ship and on to level 2. So on level 2, we are taking another level in Cleric, so we unlock our Channel Divinity skills, those being Turn Undead, a great fear spell we can use to get out of a pinch if we need to, and Preserve Life, which is an awesome skill healing all your allies in a 9-meter radius around you, which is a pretty massive AoE. You will not struggle to heal who you need to heal with this skill. It also scales with your character level, not your cleric level, healing everyone for 3 times your current level, which at level 12 is 36 healing to all allies. We will get into some awesome interactions this skill has with items as well in the level 4 gameplay section. Level 3, and we are switching gears now and taking Paladin levels. Firstly, for being a Paladin, we get Martial Weapon Proficiency, which vastly increases our weapon options. Then we get Lay on Hands, a healing option for us and our other melee allies if we need it. We also get Divine Sense, which will probably see little use, but it is nice to have, giving us advantage on attack rolls against a few enemy types. Finally, we get our Oath, and we are taking the Oath of Devotion for this build, defining our playstyle as a morally good character, and giving us Holy Rebuke, which could be useful for a few levels, letting us put an aura on an ally, dealing 1 to 4 radiant damage to anyone who attacks them in melee. The build is starting to come together now, giving us quite a few great abilities, and on level 4 we take a 2nd level in Paladin, getting our Paladin spells, 2nd level spell slots, and a fighting style. So let's start there, and we are taking the dueling fighting style, and while protection might be more thematic, the dueling style gives you a bonus 2 damage while you are wielding only a one-handed weapon and a shield. This definitely helps to bump the damage of your otherwise measly one-handed weapon. Next, let's go back a step and look at Divine Smite, the feature that Paladins are most known for. It deals 2d8 radiant damage and can be upcast, dealing a bonus 1d8 damage per spell level. This is a great use of your level 2 spell slots for big damage on demand. For your level 1 spells, however, we now have access to a wide range of crowd control smite skills. Thunderous Smite is your go-to, dealing a bonus 2d6 thunder damage and having a chance to knock enemies prone. We also have Wrathful Smite for a fear effect, and Command is a Swiss Army knife of utility. Finally, our main concentration skill is Compelled Duel, and this is our main taunt skill, forcing enemies to attack you by giving it disadvantage on attacks against all targets other than the Paladin for 3 rounds. This basically means that now, since the AI is more likely to target an enemy they are more likely to hit, the target of this spell will attack you every time. Okay, let's take a look at combat and some items on this level. You may not quite have all these items by level 4, but you should have them by around level 5 at the latest. So during your early combat encounters, you want to try and maintain Bless on your allies as your choice of concentration spell. However, while you are doing this, you cannot concentrate on Compelled Duel, which is a problem. So early on, try to save Compelled Duel for fights where there is a single target that you want to keep focused on you. Fortunately, the Whispering Promise Ring is available quite early in Act 1, and this will serve as the perfect buffer, letting your AoE heals like Preserve Life apply Bless to all allies affected by it, meaning you don't need to concentrate on it, freeing up your use of Compelled Duel. Just adding to this, we're also using Hellrider's Pride Gloves and the Boots of Aiden Comfort, which will give all targets you heal resistance to piercing, slashing, and bludgeoning damage, and grant them 3 temporary hit points every time you heal, making them tanky, blessed, and with more health than before. If you're choosing to run with a party member that utilizes summons, like my Elemental Warden build, this is especially potent, applying to all the summons you have out as well. Next, we further support our allies with Fala Aluve, letting you once per short rest give them and yourself a bonus d4 to attack rolls and hit chance. As far as offensive abilities go, you definitely want to be making use of your Thundering Smite. It has a chance to knock your enemies away and prone, taking them out of the fight for a turn. And if you really need a specific enemy to die, you can also spend an additional spell slot to add a Divine Smite onto the attack, making it 2d6 plus 4d8 plus 5 in a single attack, which is nothing to scoff at, capping out at 54 damage on level 4. You might be wondering how we're going to be tanking hits though, and that is due to our armor, the Adamantine Splint Armor. The great thing here is that the armor reduces all damage we take by 2, and whenever an enemy hits us, you get 3 stacks of the Reeling debuff. This debuff reduces the enemy's chance to hit by 1 per stack. Now you can take the adamantine shield as well, giving enemies that miss you with an attack 2 turns of the same debuff, meaning no matter if they hit or miss you, they will always have a reduced hit chance. These debuffs don't stack though, so maybe save your second mithril ore for a different party member. Alternatively, I would consider Safeguard Shield or Glowing Shield for Act 1, giving you a +1 bonus to saving throws or some temporary hit points when you drop low on health. Finally, we have the Holy Lance Helm, which causes creatures who miss their attacks against you to roll a dexterity save. If they fail, they take 1d4 in radiant damage. This is a great effect to add a bit of chip damage to whittle away at our opponents. Awesome, our support game is on point and we are starting to feel tanky. I'll chuck a few other options on the screen. So you might be wondering where our signature weapon is, and if you have played through the Mountain Pass before, I wanted to take this first opportunity to highlight Fala Aluve, since you likely won't be getting the Blood of Lathander till the very end of Act 1. So let's check it back in with that at level 8. Okay, back to the build. So level 5, and this is a great level for us since we are a Paladin 3 and we get the Sacred Weapon skill here. This skill lets us add our charisma modifier to our attack rolls, which is fantastic since we don't have a great strength score at the moment. This will last the full duration of a fight in most situations and give us a +3 to our attack rolls. This along with the Halfling Luck feature, and we should be hitting harder and now more frequently as well, which is great. This is also a fantastic way to use our otherwise not super useful Channel Oath charges. Also on this level we get Turn the Unholy, which is similar to the Cleric version, except it also affects fiends. We get the Divine Health, making us immune to diseases, and we get Sanctuary and Protection from Evil and Good, always prepared, as our Oath spells. Level 6, finally we get our first feat here, and we get to remedy one of those odd stat scores. There are 2 feats we're taking for the build, and you can take them in either order. Heavy Armor Master gives us 1 strength, increasing our damage, hit chance, and reduces damage from non-magical attacks by 3. Non-magical is definitely the vast majority of damage you'll be taking in the game, and this is definitely a strong choice. If you find yourself struggling to stay alive, I would start here. Personally though, I'm going with the other option, which is the Resilient feat, picking Constitution. So why are we doing this? Firstly, as a support character, you will likely be concentrating on a spell at all times. Even Compelled Duel is concentration based. But as a Paladin and a Cleric, you don't have advantage or proficiency in Constitution saving throws, which may result in you constantly losing that concentration. You will get a buffer with Fala Aluve and Bless early on, but eventually you will need to rely on your own Constitution score and proficiency, since you'll lose Fala Aluve as soon as you get your next weapon. So feel free to pick up whichever you like here. We will be taking both of them and the order is up to you. Level 7, and finally extra attack. This is the main reason we push through with Paladin, letting us attack a second time on our turn. We also get level 2 spells here, and honestly there aren't many great ones. Aid is fantastic, but we likely won't need it, as you'll see shortly. Silence and Lesser Restoration are our Oath spells, so always prepared, and that doesn't leave many other options. I'll take Branding Smite here just in case, but I rarely use it due to its concentration requirement. Level 8, and we could say Paladin here for Aura of Protection, and I wouldn't fault you for it if you did. It could definitely help if you took Heavy Armor Master on level 6. We will be getting it, but just not yet, as I'm going to go back to Cleric here. Level 3 Cleric gives us 2nd level spells and 3rd level spell slots. Some great options here are Enhance Ability and even better Spiritual Weapon, giving you a summon that doesn't require concentration. Okay, let's check in on our progress here. At level 8, we want to be starting combat with Sacred Weapon and Bless pre-buffed if possible. If not, chuck on whatever you value most, then move to intercept your enemies. Cast Compelled Duel if you need to and you're not concentrating on Bless, then chuck out your Spiritual Weapon if you didn't use Compelled Duel. Make sure it's within close range of an enemy since it has a low move distance. From there, just whack and smite away while keeping an eye on your allies, topping them up with a heal at the end of your turn with Healing Word if you can, or use your turn to top up and buff several allies at once with Preserve Life. Let's take a look at gear. We are still using our Holy Lance Helm, Whispering Promise Ring, and Boots of Aid and Comfort. I opted to swap my gloves for Gloves of the Duelist, helping me hit those higher armor class enemies. but held onto my Hellrider's gloves in case the situation called for it. For armor, I'm showcasing the Dwarven Splint Mail for the bonus to saving throws, armor class, and constitution. However, if you wanted to keep your adamantine splint armor, I would not fault you for it. If I was playing the character, I likely would. The damage reduction and immunity to crits is still incredibly valuable. Next up, we grab Vivacious Cloak, giving us a regular source of temporary hit points, since it does proc from your smite spells and of course anything else you use while up close to enemies, so it refreshes very often. It also gains a lot more value if you have damage reduction like Heavy Armor Master feat and our armor choice. We picked up Callous Glow Ring to replace the Strange Conduit Ring, opting for the Radiant theme and more consistent damage and potential of higher damage on AoE attacks and multi-damage type attacks. Speaking of which, we have one big AoE connected to our new weapon, the Blood of Lathander, one of the earliest legendary weapons in the game and right on theme for this build. Please, if you are playing this character, take the Mountain Pass and go to the old Temple of Lathander for this weapon, if nothing else. It has an amazing +3 to attack and damage rolls, a resurrection mechanic once per long rest, it emits light synergizing with Callous Glow Ring, and blinding fiends and undead. Finally, it has the Sunbeam skill, a level 6 spell that you can use once per long rest, dealing 6d8 damage and blinding enemies. Definitely a great skill to have, and radiant damage is rarely resisted. As for our shield, I opted for the Shield of Devotion, giving us an extra level 1 spell slot for smites and access to a level 3 version of the aid spell for free, meaning you don't need to spend a spell slot on it every time you long rest and granting you 10 HP instead of 5. Okay, second breakdown done, back to the build. So on level 9 we take our 4th level in Cleric, picking up a cantrip. Take Blade Ward if you don't have it, otherwise pick your favourite. Then we get our second feat based on our earlier choices, finally evening out that pesky strength score and making us less dependent on Sacred Weapon. Level 10, and this is our 5th level in Cleric. This unlocks our 3rd level spells, but we also get Destroy Undead, upgrading the Cleric's Turn Undead spell to now also deal 4d6 radiant damage to any undead creature that is successfully hit by the spell, making it a much more potent option in those scenarios. Unfortunately, it might be a bit late coming in this build and you will miss out on some of the best uses for this in Act 2, but you may still find a couple of uses in Act 3. On to level 3 spells though, and your main concentration spell from this point forward will likely be switching to Spirit Guardians now. Anytime you don't have a main boss type enemy to taunt. This does 3d8 radiant damage, increasing by 1d8 each level it is upcast. It deals damage to all enemies standing in the AoE at the start of your turn, or the first time they enter it each round, meaning you can deal damage to every enemy you run next to each turn, effectively weaponizing your movement. Great spell, prioritize it for damage dealing. Secondly, we get Mass Healing Word, and I recommend grabbing this if you need to top up multiple allies and Preserve Life is on cooldown, since we still only have one cast of Preserve Life per short rest. Finally, we do get 2 other domain spells, being Beacon of Hope, a super thematic spell, maxing out our healing spells and giving us advantage on saving throws. Unfortunately though, it's really only useful for Mass Healing Word, since our Preserve Life and our Lay on Hands both heal for flat amounts, so they can't be increased with this spell. Still, it's nice to have. The other is Revivify, letting us trade spell slots for lives, but honestly you won't be using this unless you're desperate, and I have found that the abundance of scrolls thrown at you, so try to use those first and save your precious spell slots for when you need them. Level 11, and this is where there are 2 paths forward. Firstly, we can take a final level in Cleric, getting us an additional Channel Divinity charge, letting us use Preserve Life twice per short rest, and at this level it's healing for 32 hit points flat. So this means a solid 64 hit points to all party members per short rest, along with all the buffs we chuck out when we heal. But we also get the Blessed Healer feature, which lets us heal ourselves for 2 plus the spell's level in healing for each target affected, making AoE heals even more potent for healing yourself. Though if you wanted to take a more protecting role, you could pick up another level in Paladin now, reaching level 6 in Paladin, getting us the amazing Aura of Protection, granting you and your allies within 3 meters a bonus to all their saving throws equal to your Charisma modifier, so +3 to all saving throws. Whatever you decide, take both classes to level 6 to close out the build, and let's take a look at the character on max level. The amazing thing about this build is all the options you have at your disposal. You have 34 unique spells across damage, heals, support, and movement, giving you an option no matter the situation. You are incredibly tanky and can still upcast all your skills all the way up to level 5 spell slots. You can support your allies by healing and prevent a bunch of damage, but the only thing I wish that we got with this build is one more feat so we could pick up Sentinel. But playing this build makes you feel incredibly tanky and you still deal a solid amount of damage while healing any substantial damage that you receive. One last note before we look at the endgame gear is that it might seem like at first there is a lot of overlap with these subclasses, making them not worth taking together. But the great thing about this build is you can work things together so that Cleric only takes supportive skills with your limited spell preparation slots due to your low wisdom. Then the Paladin takes all your offensive skills or skills that require an enemy save roll, since you'll be more likely to hit due to your higher charisma. This results in you getting almost all the good Cleric skills and all the good Paladin skills without too much bloat. As a bonus, the spells you automatically prepare as both Oath and Domain spells never overlap, meaning you can always choose around what you get with each, unlocking further spell options for the build. Okay, let's take a look at endgame gear now. So the only items that are still around for the last check-in are the Callous Glow Ring, the Whispering Promise Ring, and the Vivacious Cloak, along with the Blood of Lathander. We are getting immunity to critical hits, stun, and bonuses to our saving throws from the Helm of the Balduran. For our armor, we are using the Armor of Persistence, giving us a permanent blade ward and resistance along with 20 AC and a flat damage reduction of 2. This is by far the best armor we could be wearing as a tank. For gloves, this is not mandatory, but the Gauntlets of Frost Giant Strength boost your struggling strength score up to 23, giving it a +6 modifier compared to your previous +3. For boots, we have the Boots of Persistence, giving us better dexterity saving throws, freedom of movement, and importantly, Long Strider, since we do have reduced movement as a halfling, and we want to make the most of our movement on our turns. We have the Amulet of Greater Health to give us a bonus to our Constitution. This gives us an additional 36 hit points at level 12. The advantage on Constitution saving throws is great, however, we do have a +16 to our Constitution saving throws at this point, so it's kinda overkill. If you are comfortable with your health without this, I would keep your Amulet of Misty Step to get around easier. Viconia's Walking Fortress is being added to our legendary repertoire, making us incredibly resistant to spell attacks, and we get the Reflective Shell, reflecting all projectiles back at attackers for 2 turns, once per short rest. Finally, we have the Darkfire Shortbow, giving us resistance to fire and cold damage, and granting us the Haste spell once per short rest, if we really need it in a pinch to dish out that last bit of damage or healing. And that's the build. I hope you enjoyed it this week, and if you are enjoying the content and the new format, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. If you didn't like it, let me know why in the comments, and either way, thanks so much for watching till the end, and I'll see you soon.